Hello and welcome to this video where I'm gonna basically step out of my comfort zone and make a cooking video. Great! Besides my love for video games, I also love to cook, to eat. I'm by no means any chef or anything like that, but I do like to spend time in the kitchen. So for my first cooking video, I'm gonna be testing out my vertical rotisserie and I will be making not Doner Kebab. The reason why I call it not Doner Kebab is because I will be using pork collar for my recipe. And traditionally, kebab is made out of lamb, beef or chicken. The reason why I use pork is because it's the cheapest meat I could find, and since I'm using it to test out my new rotisserie, I did not want to waste a lot of money on more expensive meat in case it turned out bad. So I'm starting off cutting the pork into slices. I'm probably cutting them a little too thick, but I think it will help keep the meat a bit more juicy. In case you wanna cut your slices thinner, you can first of all get a sharper knife than mine. And put your meat in the freezer for 20 to 30 minutes, maybe a bit longer depending on how big your meat is. That will help firm up the meat and make it easier to slice it thinly. And here's the point of the video where my meat tower falls. I took it pretty well. After that I start on making my marinade for the meat. My original plan was to go out and buy a ton of spices that I would roast off and grind and add to my marinade, but then visiting my local spice man, I found this. This is a spice mix used for dolma, which is meat stuffed cabbage rolls, and I looked at the bag and saw that it contains most of the spices that I was looking for. So I took the easy route. I spent around $1.50 on this bag, and I would have spent a lot more on buying all the spices individually. And my most important New Year resolution was to start spending less money. So I'm already doing great on that front. I start with a couple of scoops of Greek yogurt and then I add in the spice mix. After that I start chopping up a few cloves of garlic. I add a bit of coarse salt on the garlic and start grinding it with the side of my knife. I just remember seeing a TV chef do this before and I just wanted to try it. Just to be fancy. Add it to the marinade along with the best, cheapest lemon juice in a bottle you can find, and then taste your marinade for seasoning. Mine needed a bit more of everything, so yeah, I just started adding more of everything. I then start to mix my marinade with my meat. Love that sound. I place it in a pitcher of all things and cover it to let it marinate the night over. My homemade flatbread turned out to be a lesson that whenever you see a great recipe online, make sure you write it down because one day it might be gone. I usually make my flatbread from a recipe on a food blog that belonged to two girls. They have apparently closed down their blog and deleted their recipes. I then looked around online for a similar recipe, thought I had found one that was very close. That turned out not to be the case. The dough was very wet and unwieldy, so I had to add a lot of extra flour so that I could handle it better. I per instinct always add extra salt to my dough whenever I'm making bread, but even doing that this time the bread needed a lot more salt. But the worst part was the flavor. It only tasted of yeast. So no, I'm not gonna share this recipe with anyone. Now the time has come to assemble my beautiful meat tower. Magnificent. The manual of my rotisserie says that it needs 5 minutes to get fully hot and that the first layer of meat should be ready after 15 to 20 minutes. So after almost an hour, the first layer of meat was ready to be trimmed off. I put together my sandwich with a handful of mixed lettuce leaves, then the meat, add some creme fraiche dressing with chives, and then the sad remains of my sriracha sauce. And I finish it off with some roughly chopped red onions. And there we have it, the finished result. It came out looking pretty well, if I do say so myself. It's a shame about the bread though, but hey, I can try a different recipe next time and see if that gets any better. The meat itself, I think the spice mix is like almost spot on, at least to the kebabs that I'm used to getting. The marinade needed a bit more salt, but after I cut it off, I tasted it and it just added a bit more then, so it was not really any problem. And nothing else to do than see if I can have a taste with a bit of everything in it. This non kebab might be one of the best kebabs I ever had. The meat is like really fucking awesome, even though it's pork and not really true kebab. But I love this. I think this was a success. I mean, the flavor, so nice. So this brings us to the end of my first cooking video. I think it went pretty well. I mean, it tastes really awesome, and I have leftovers for a couple of days, so that's really awesome. And yeah, I'm really impressed that my vertical rotisserie worked. I mean, it worked so well. I probably wouldn't say, because it says it takes like 15-20 minutes for the first layer to be ready. It took almost an hour. So not that sure about that, but hey, it tastes awesome still. So hey, if you've been sticking through the bad English, you are a real hero. Thanks for watching and take care.